Okay, let me save the document. Okay, guys, yeah, let's today. Okay, now Spring Boot. Okay, how Spring Boot came into picture means like initially we are using of Spring, so due to that we are facing of lot of due to some drawbacks. You can say like it is a some drawbacks were there. So later Spring guys were in. One more thing is for advanced for the Spring is like it is a Spring Boot. So whatever the drawbacks that are part of Spring, we can overcome by using a Spring Boot. What are all the drawbacks? How exactly we are overcoming those things? Let me repeat again. Okay, so the problems is like in case of Spring applications, to develop any Spring application from scratch, compulsory it is of the developer responsibility to hunt and to search all the compatible libraries. Then only the application should work without any problems. Means otherwise you'll get up some inconsistent results. Sometimes it behave like differently. Okay, if the compatible libraries are not attached in the POM file or in the Gradle file. Okay, so that problem we can overcome by using Spring Boot application. So as part of Spring Boot, they have introduced one new functionality or new feature that is called Spring Boot Starter. So how exactly the Spring Boot Starter is going to resolve our dependencies means let's say, so the Spring version is different, Spring Boot version is different, guys. Okay, now if you want to go for Spring Boot, so everything it will be called in the form of starters. Everything in the form of will get the dependencies in the form of starters. Let's say if you are trying to in the application, if you are developing on a Spring application, you need to search of some 10 to 20 libraries or 100 libraries. Okay, then in that case so every library the dependents and compatible libraries. Okay, if you are if you are using a phone one version Spring version, then it is compatible to some hybrid version also. If this is the Spring version means we need to use of this hybrid version or this JPA version, like that we need to use of some compatible libraries. Okay, otherwise it will not work as expected the application. That dependencies will be taken care by Spring Boot Starter. Okay, Spring Boot Starter, how exactly it is taken care means if you are using of one Spring Boot version anything. Okay, let's say the current latest version of Spring Boot is maybe Spring 3 point something, I think. Spring Boot Starter. Okay, so if you want to search, this is the way you need to search which compatible versions that is required for our application. Okay, that we no need to do in case of Spring Boot. Okay, if it is a Spring application means then we need to check off all the things. Okay, come down. We are using of 2.7.7. Okay, go for this version. And inside this you need to go for a central from where exactly it is downloading our required libraries and compatible library versions. If we are using of 2.7.7 internally, it will use of some Hibernate, some GPA and Spring versions and other JUnit, Mockito. All libraries will be upgrade, it will upgrade automatically. We don't need to do any upgradation for that. So Spring Boot automatically it will get that upgraded jar files only, upgraded dependencies only, it will download it to our application. Now let's say this is the repo. Okay, Maven repository. Inside this only all that will be available, so even our application also will download from this repository. Okay, now org, so we need to search for org. So our based on the package only it will we need to search it. Okay, let me take off one example. Yeah. So first, if you are going for any dependency, if you are going off any dependency, either actuator or data JPA, why data JPA? Why data JPA means? So why not JDBC? If you are using for JDBC means, you are using for JDBC means, so directly, so it will download up all the JDBC related dependencies, everything JDBC template, named JDBC template, named parameter JDBC template, like that multiple templates is there. It will download all those things, but we will not use of JDBC template because that is the old one. Okay, so data JPA. What is JPA first? Okay, what is JPA? Let me explain it. Let me explain it. Okay, first. So we have till now we have seen Hibernate, right, guys? Hibernate. Hibernate, we know. Correct or not? Right? So JPA. What is mean by JPA? Anyone has a what is mean by JPA? Java persistent persistent API. Okay, Java persistent API. Okay, now why we need to go for JPA instead of Hibernate means, there is some advantages there if you are using JPA. And what is Spring Data JPA? Okay, Spring Data JPA. So if you are using Hibernate means, what are all the files that is required, guys? HBM files, right? Pozo classes, correct or not? And one more is configuration file. Hibernate config file, right? Config file is also required. Config file is also config. Hibernate config cfg.xml file is there, right? We'll call that as a config file. And one more thing is DAO IMPL class also required. Correct or not? Now here, in case of Hibernate, if you are using Hibernate, you want to use for your application. Okay, for your, what is Hibernate? It is of ORM tool, right or not? ORM framework, correct? What is mean by ORM? Object relational mapping, correct? So if our application is using a ORM of Hibernate application, ORM framework of Hibernate, Hibernate has its own jar files, correct or not? Its own jar file, its own packages, correct or not? If our application using if our application DAO layer, if our application, where we'll use this model class, in case of model class only, right? We'll use it all these HBM files, config file, and DAO correct or not? For developing DAO layer, we will use a Warren framework. Okay, it may be Hibernate, okay, or Ibatics, or Top Link, like that. Multiple ORM tools are there. Multiple ORM tools are there. So if we are using Hibernate, compulsory Hibernate related classes. So Hibernate related class compulsory we need to use or not, right? Compulsory, we need of HBM files, we need of POSO classes, or we need of DAVMPL class. Will create a session factory object or Hibernate template object, like that. We'll create and then we'll interact with the database. Correct? Right? Now, if I want to use, of any other ORM frameworks, any other ORM frameworks, then it is very difficult to convert. Let's say already you have developed 50% of your development by using Hibernate. But in the middle of your development, Hibernate is not good for some features. It is suitable. It is good in case of top link, or it is good in case of ibatics. Then in that case, we can't convert. Again, it will take off. We need to convert all our code to according to ibatics or according to top link. Correct or not? That means that there is no portability, right? So in case of that case, the JPA will come into the picture. Okay, in that case, JPA will come into the picture. JPA means, okay, In that case, JPA will come into the picture. So how exactly means, let's say in case of JDBC has some specification or not, correct? So JDBC contains some interface and classes. So for that, who provided implementation? Some vendors, Oracle vendor, MySQL vendor, some different vendors is created their own classes. Correct or not? If we want to connect with Oracle database, then we need to include Oracle in our class path. Correct or not? Right? But the classes and interface are won't change. Correct or not? Right? It is part of the JDBC specification. JDBC specification. Specification means it is like a PDF document. Okay, it is like a some documentation. Okay, for that the Sun people, for that Sun people provided, yes, these are the classes and these are the interfaces you need to provide for as part of the specification. So based on that classes, those people will develop the project. Means Oracle product or MySQL. Based on that, they can develop it. So we will need to add in our class path of, if you want to use of Oracle, then we'll add in the Oracle in the class path. If you want to MySQL, then we can add MySQL jar file. Correct or not? In the same way, okay. In the same way, JPA is also a specification given by Sun people. Specification given by Sun people. As part of that, JPA contains APIs, Java persistent API classes and interfaces. It contains of some classes and interfaces. By using these classes and interfaces only, someone will provide implementation. Okay, Java X dot persistence package. Okay, all classes, whoever you providing implementation for this specification, they will use of these packages to implement the to provide the implementation for these classes and interfaces and annotations as well, annotations also. Okay, annotations. So we are providing implementation. So implementation vendors, we'll call it as a implementation vendors. So this API was this JPA was okay, provided implementation by Hibernate. Okay, Hibernate top link, okay, and ibatics, okay, like that. There are multiple vendors is provided implementation. Okay, multiple vendors provided implementation by following JPA specification. Okay, along with that, they have their own annotations also is there. If they are following of JPA specification classes, interfaces, and annotations, then at the time of in we are developing 50% of development in DAO. Okay, then if you want to convert from Hibernate to Hibernate to top link or Ibatics, then we no need to do any other changes. Simply we need to convert our Hibernate jar to, so let's say JPA related all annotations classes are available in JPA is provided in one part of one jar file. Hibernate Hibernate hyphen JPA dot 2.0 2.0 dot jar file. So JPA related classes and interfaces and annotations provided implementation as part of Hibernate JPA jar. Okay, if this jar file is in our class path, then it contains of all JPA provided implementations. Or for that, Hibernate is provided implementation. If you are using of, if you want to move in the middle of 50% also, then we can easily move to some other top link ORM framework. Then instead of adding this jar, I can, for top link guys also provided implementation for JPA classes, interface and annotations. So in the form of one jar file, just assume like hyphen JPA dot 2.0 dot jar file. Okay, in the middle of our implementation of Hibernate in the DAO layer, this Hibernate is not good for implementing our DAO layer, it is not supporting some feature correctly, then top link is providing features properly, then we can add off top link jar file in the class path. But all the packages, even this also contains javax dot persistent, javax dot persistent dot x sub packages, just assume dot star package. So it contains of all other packages also. We no need to change any other changes apart from jar file class, apart from adding jar file in the class path, because it is implemented based on the portability. Okay, so the specification is given by some people. So for this, all the classes and interface are given by sun only. So these people are provided implementation on their own. Okay, if hibernate is using, we'll add in the hibernate jar file in that. If you are using top link, then top link will use, but the packages will never change. Packages will never change until and unless if you are using of any specific packages to hibernate or top link. So other cases we don't need to modify of any other changes. In that case, the JPA will come into the picture. Okay, but if you are using of hibernate, we need to write off some level of code. At least we need to write some code, right? But if you are using of spring data JPA, okay, if we are using of spring data JPA, we no need to write any code in the DAO layer. Already the JPA people or implementation internally provided implementation. So we know spring people provide implementation. If you are extending that class, and if you are enable JPA repositories and some package, so whatever the interfaces part of that class, let's say go to our package one repository package. So if you are using of if we are using repository, if you are using JPA, it is a Java Persistent API repository class. Then who will provide the implementation means internally Spring Data guys. Spring guys provided implementation by using data science. By using data science, they have provided implementation. It contains of around 18 methods is available. It contains around 18 methods are there. So for all those methods, if we are enabling what annotation, that is called enable JPA repository annotation, then internally it will be implemented by spring guys. We no need to provide any implementation. So one thing guys, so on database, what operations that we can do guys, what are the operations that we can do, what are the operations that we can do in database? Only card, right? Any other things that we can do? No, right? So for the card related, create, update, retrieve, delete. So for these four operations, they created around 18 methods. They created around 18 methods to get the data, to update the data, to delete the data, to create the data. For all those things, they have created some predefined methods. So if you are using those methods, why do we need to provide implementation? Already they have provided, right? So in that case, we no need to provide implementation. Okay, for updation, deletion, creation, and delete, all these things, they have created methods. We need to use those methods. That's it. If you are using JPA, if you are using JPA, then we no need to provide any implementation. That is what the advantages of. If you are using hibernate, we need to write logic in case of DAO layer. But if you are using of JPA, then we don't need to provide any implementation. That is the nowadays the companies are following this new one. Okay, the repository with JPA they are following. Now where we are now, we are deviated from one place to another. Okay, but you understood of what, why do we need JPA, right? Before we are using JPA guys, sorry, hibernate guys. Okay, before we are using hibernate, nowadays we are using spring data JPA. Nowadays we are using of spring data JPA in most of the application newly most of the newly started applications that are using Spring Data JPA. Okay, JPA instead of Hibernate. Now, next, compatible libraries is clear. Now coming to auto configuration is the second feature of Spring Boot is introduced. So what is exactly auto configuration? So let me first I'm asking you guys, what is meant by auto configuration, guys? So based on your understanding on previous class, can someone tell? On top of that, I'll explain. Okay, good. Yes, here and XML configuration files and app configuration files, correct. So normally in case of Spring application, okay, normally in case of Spring application, in DAO layer or in model layer, we will use of either Hibernate template or JDBC template, like, and we need to add of a dispatcher select in the configuration file in the web.xml file, and we need to use of view resolver to execute of some JSPs, all those things, correct or not? So compulsory we need to configure these all the classes. These are all classes must and should configure in the our class path, right or not? In the configuration in the Spring configuration file or in the Java based configuration file, compulsory we need to add these beans. Otherwise, it cannot understood that. It cannot auto wire. It cannot auto wire. So in case of Spring, only for the user defined classes auto wiring is available, not for predefined classes. But in case of Spring Boot, Spring Boot guys provided auto configuration for predefined classes as well. Okay, those are what type of predefined classes means. It is of data source for database connectivity, and JDBC for to interact with the database. Okay, and internally it will interact with the data source, and same way for view resolver to identifying the exact JSP location. Okay, internal resource view resolver, the meaning of view resolver means. Okay, and Hibernate handler mappings to identify as part of Spring Flow. Any request will come to dispatch servlet. Dispatcher servlet will interact with some handler mapping classes to identify which controller class should execute, that by using of handler mapping. But in case of Spring Boot, even we no need to do that as well, like the transaction manager, Hibernate template, all those things. Auto configuration will be done by Spring Boot itself automatically. We don't need to do any coding for that, if these classes are available in the class path. Okay, let's go through example. Okay, now through example we'll see. Yeah, so everything, so as part of Spring Boot, what is the configuration file, guys? As part of Spring Boot, as part of Spring Boot, application.properties file, we will call it as a configuration file, Spring Boot configuration file. Okay, but in case of Spring, what is the configuration file? Either we can say XML file. Okay, XML file, or we will create up some app config file. Those two, which is the class which is annotated with at configuration file, at configuration annotation, whichever class is having at configuration annotation in the Java configuration of Spring application, we will call that as a configuration file. Okay, but in case of Spring Boot application.properties file, all that would be configured inside application.properties file. Okay, this is the database related, this is of Hibernate related to enable of so underscore SQL to create of tables. This is the configuration. So this is of dialect, and this is for enabling of everything. This is for enabling of endpoints related to health check related. So everything, that means that instead of creating some XML file or some Java file, we are using of application dot property file. Application dot properties file is the configuration file. Okay, and even we can use of Java configuration also for this. Okay, even application dot properties, whatever that is there, if you want to make it dynamic, we can use of Java configuration also, we can add it. Okay, in case of Spring Boot also, that option is also available internally at Spring Boot. Configuration is extending at the configuration annotation. Already, if you want, internally it is using of whatever the Spring Boot configuration, it is using of at configuration. That means that whatever the behavior of at configuration, along with that it is adding of other behavior as well, as part of for Spring Boot guys, they created at the Spring Boot configuration is the suitable annotation for in case of Spring Boot applications. That's the reason at at configuration they used internally, but the name they have given in case of Spring Boot application is at Spring Boot configuration annotation specialized. Okay, now next, the next one, is it clear guys? The auto configuration means, along with that, there is, this is a main annotation guys, enable auto configuration. This will enable all the whichever the classes is available in the class path, automatically it will configure those, automatically it will configure them, the matches and not matches found. If it is both are matching, then automatically it will wire it which class is mapped, which other class is, that configuration we can see by using a feature called actuator feature. Actuator concept is there in the Spring Boot. Now next, let me open up this. Yeah, that we'll see once again. This I'll explain once again that by running the application guys. Okay, I'll show you that. Now, in case of Spring, we are separately deploying of Tomcat application, Tomcat server, correct or not? But in case of Spring Boot, we no need to add it. We no need to deploy our application external servers. Okay, Spring Boot internally itself is giving one server. Either we can use of Tomcat server or Jetty server or Undertow server. By default, by default, Spring Boot is provided Tomcat server. By default, Spring Boot is giving Tomcat server, and by default port is also 8080. It will start the Tomcat server. If we want to change that, if we want to change the, if some other application is using of some other software is using of 8080 port means, then it will not work out. Okay, then in that case we need to change that port to different port. For that the configuration is, the configuration file is application dot properties file only. If you want some other port of your server, then server dot port, server dot port, there is one existing property, there is one existing property. Okay, yeah, these are all things guys, these are all the core properties of for all those things. Let's say for web related, this is for web related, for data related, like that they have given a lot for actuator related properties. Okay. Hmm. And dev tools related, server related. Now let's see server dot port, somewhere it might be there. See, server related properties. So Spring Boot people are provided properties. If you are adding this property, if you are adding this property, then automatically Spring Boot itself will take care of to which port we need to use. Okay, like that for different purpose. They have created different properties. If you are using this property in the application dot properties, then rest of the things will be taken care by Spring Boot itself. It can understood where exactly I need to inject this properties. Let's say uh, Spring dot data source, right? Data source is there, right? Spring dot data JDBC related, MongoDB related, like this Redis cache related. Data SY data source. Yeah. See, so if you are using in the class path, if you are adding dbcp2 data source, then automatically it will use a Spring data source data dbc2 means then internally it will connect with dbcp2 data source. Okay, dot URL. So if you are using this, whichever the class is available based on the sequence, either Hickory data source or Tomcat or DBCP or Oracle or generic data source, like that, whichever this is available in the class path first, it will connect with that data source and then it will get the connections. Okay. So that means from this you should understood. So instead of writing all the XML configuration file, we need to search for our actual functionality. We need to search for one property in the application or property file in the Spring Boot. Always Spring Boot is provided many properties. We need to choose which property is suitable for our requirement. That property we need to add in our application or properties. That is our responsibility. Okay, is it clear, guys, or not? Here the properties already they given. Who given, guys? This is given by Spring Boot document, guys. This is not my own document. This is given by Spring Boot people. Spring people given as part of Spring Boot documentation. If we are using these properties instead of doing a lot of configuration in the XML file, so if you are using these properties, I can configure my own. You people no need to do any other. You don't need to create a separate data source object, separate JDBC template object, all those things. So I can configure these properties as part of data source. I will inject the data source as part of Hibernate template or JDBC template. You people no need to worry about that. That dependency, all those things will be taken care by Spring Boot itself. Okay. Next, next one is the problem. Yeah. Now the server part is done, completed. Embedded server, Spring Boot starter web. So which web we need to, which starter dependency, which starter dependency will download Tomcat server means Spring Boot starter web, Spring Boot start sorry Spring Boot starter web, a download of Spring Boot starter web, download the dependency. Spring Boot starter web, download the dependency for the Tomcat server. So this we are adding this dependency in the pom.xml file. Then Spring Boot automatically download Tomcat server as well. We don't need to download anything separately. Automatical pull Spring Boot starter Tomcat, which starts Tomcat as a embedded server. With the port is also a 8080 by default. If you want to change the port, then we need to modify that port number in the application.properties file. As per that, it will start the server. Next, actuator concept. Actuator concept is like so as part of Spring application, okay, everything is implements on top of Spring here, guys. So in case of Spring, the auto wiring to which class is auto wired, that we don't know, right? So but in case of Spring Boot, it is very difficult to identify also. if you are clear fully, then even that case also it is very difficult to identify that all the auto wiring beans. But in case of Spring Boot, they given a provision to identify which bean is auto wired with which other bean, which bean is depending on which other bean. All the dependencies we can easily identify by using a feature called actuator features. If you are adding actuator starter in the pom.xml file and one property and one more property in the application dot properties file management dot endpoint dot web dot exposure dot include of give star, then all the related being related environment properties, health check, metrics, everything will be enabled and we can verify all those things. Okay, that we'll see now. Let's go to application. First part is, so Spring Boot starter. Spring Boot starter is the main. So Spring Boot starter, if you are downloading for any dependency, if you are downloading for any, there are more than 30 modules in the Spring Boot. Okay, so they have given up or for each and everything they have given some starter. So they have given some starter. So if you are using of that starter, then automatically internally it will interact with some Spring Boot starter parent, which dependent libraries, compatible libraries that we need to download. For that, we need of if you are adding the version in the parent tag itself, then in the below whatever the dependencies that we have mentioned as part of dependencies, then all that will be downloaded as part of compatible with 2.7.7. Okay, if we are removing this one, if we are removing this one, then adding of in the in this case, okay, there is no need of that. So if the parent itself is added, the version means the below child dependencies will be downloaded according to the parent configurations. Okay, if you want you can change that also. If you want you can modify the version of others, but you will get off some compatibility issues. It's not correct. So anyhow all Spring Boot starters will follow up spray same Spring Boot version. Then in that case, instead of mentioning this version in the each starter dependency, okay, we can use of that version in the parent level. Okay, next concept, next one. So auto configuration. So if you want to see which classes is provided, which for which all classes is Spring Boot is provided auto configuration means, okay, then go to maven dependency. So it contains of Spring Boot auto configure of version, there is one jar file will be available. Spring Boot hyphen auto configure, there is one jar file will be there. Not this Spring Boot. Yeah, see Spring Boot, Spring hyphen boot hyphen auto configure hyphen 2.7.7. Okay, as part of this whatever the classes is available, as part of this whatever the classes is available for all those packages and classes, Spring Boot is provided implementation auto configuration. Okay, now if you want you can see of all those things. Not only this, where is that? Not this. Yeah, for all of this, for all of these classes, Spring Boot has provided. Spring Boot has provided auto configuration. Auto configuration. Let's go and see of any class. Any class, or else we can search for Hibernate template. Okay, let's see. Hibernate. Not this. Control Shift T. Hibernate template, but I didn't added specifically Hibernate related jars, but automatically the JPA will take care of all the dependencies, ORM, Spring ORM. So object relational mapping, all ORM libraries also it will download it. Okay, internal it is having session factory. Okay, so it is auto configuring all those things. If it is available in the class path, then automatically it can automatically it will configure. See, it is there in the jar file somewhere. So compulsory, if somewhere that file must be there in the some jar file, it is there as part of hibernate hyphen core 5.6.14 jar file. So internally from this jar file it will take that session factory class and then it will inject it. Okay, the next one. Hmm, next is configure is embedded server. Embedded server means if we are using of spring boot starter web, spring boot starter web, let's say for suppose remove of this tomcat tomcat okay, let's see, there are some tomcat related jars is there. Now let's see, if I am commenting, that is maybe data source related, control shift forward slash. See, there are some jars might be removed, there are some jars might be, let's see which all jars will be added by spring boot starter web. Now 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 let's uncomment it and then see, save it. Now let's see which other jar files is added by Tomcat. Yes, sir. As part of Spring Boot web, it contains of Tomcat related jars. It contains Tomcat server related jar. MVC. These will contains of Tomcat server related jar files, guys. These two will download. Without this, it will not download that. Okay, if you are adding this web, then automatically the spring boot starter web will download the tomcat server and it will start by using 8080 port. Okay, next, guys, don't think about this is the server, this is of data source. Okay, later Apache guys who provided implementation for Tomcat server, who given Apache guys. So Apache guys provided along with the name Tomcat server, they have provided a data source name also as a Tomcat. They have given that provision. Okay, don't think like Tomcat is not only Tomcat is always server. There is a data source also is available as part of that. Okay, they given that recently. Now next one is actuators. Actuator means if you are using of this starter, we are using of this starter, then only we can, then only let me start it and then verify it. Let me search for this. It might be available in as part of here. Let's search it somewhere. Yes, endpoint IDs that should be included star for all APIs. Let's see. Yeah, now Tomcat is started on port 9090. Okay, now let's go and verify it. Go to Postman, or even we can go to browser also, no issue. HTTP localhost localhost slash 9090 slash ACU actuators slash beans. Actuator or actuators, not sure. Let's see. Yeah, actuator, not actuators. See, all these are showing as the beans auto configuration. Which bean is depending on which other bean. That auto configuration of beans will be showing here. If you want to see of all the properties that are configured as part of environment properties, just give env. It will show up environment properties. See, actuators, all these are property files, guys. Okay, as part of whatever that we have configured here, server.port. Let's see, it will be available somewhere. The server.port is the 90. So this is the property name and this is the value, right? Now if you want to see of whatever that is there, okay, let me oracle this one will try. You can see of this is the property and value for that is this is the oracle dialect. Okay, class path resource, it is in the class path. Okay, like that all properties will we can show also everything. Okay, and if you want to check off if you want to check off health, okay, or HA, health, health is the status is showing as up and running. Okay. Any, there is no information related to info. Okay, next to metrics. Yeah, it is of showing of some metrics, so related to how much free space is there, disk space, and memory requirement, all those things we can verify by using of metrics API. By using metrics we can verify of the all the disk space, everything, how much is space is there, all those things we can verify by using of metrics. I think I have given that in the end also, maybe metrics. Yeah, so health, nv, beans, like this we have many rest and existing rest endpoints are provided by using of actuator starter. You guys are able to, is it at least somewhat better or not compared to before? That you people need to do some practice, guys, then only you can understand of something. So why this actually in case of Spring we can't identify of that health of the application by using Spring Boot? They have given one provision. What is the provision is actuator starter is there. It will show off the our application related properties. What are the auto configuration beans? What is the health check? What is the environment properties that is configured? So everything we can verify by using of this actuator framework, and one server and auto configuration and Spring Boot starters. These are the four advantages of Spring Boot main. And we can develop the production ready grade applications. Production in case of Spring means it is very difficult to make the application is ready, but by using Spring Boot we can develop the application very fast. Means as quickly as possible we can develop the Spring Boot applications very fast. Okay, maybe if you are practicing then only you will understood, guys. Okay, now, in case of microservices also, everywhere we will use of all these annotations, all these properties files, everything. But in that case, so we'll create a multiple applications like this. We'll create a, let's say I have created a Spring Boot student management application one. Okay, if our big project is there, we'll divide our project into multiple small projects. Like that, I'll create a multiple Spring Boot projects, and those Spring Boot projects will interact with one another. I will start that for all applications in different server ports, and I can interact with them. That I will show you in the microservices communication. Is it okay, guys? There are some extra things also will come as part of microservices, config server, Eureka server, everything that we need to discuss. But this is of Spring Boot application. If you understood, annotations everything is common in case of Spring Boot and Spring. Only one extra annotation, that is main is Spring Boot application. At of where is that? Yeah, this is the at the date Spring Boot application will do all magic internally to start the server, everything. Okay, it internally contains of three things: at the Spring Boot configuration, enable auto configuration, and at component scan. Okay, internally it will scan the packages, it will auto configure the classes, and it will add if any configuration files is also available in the class path. If it will add those things, it will load it. Okay, all that work will be done by using this annotation. The rest of the at controller, at repository, at service layer, at auto wire, those all annotations we already seen in the Spring application. Okay, at request mapping, all those things. Is it okay, guys? Somewhat okay. If not clear, also we'll see in the microservices. Anyhow, I'll explain microservices, right? So in that case, you can see of all these things. Same, exactly whatever the annotations that we are using now, same annotations you will see in the Spring Boot as microservice as well. Along with that, it will add up some more annotations for microservices related. Okay, guys, this is fine. Yes, then good. Now, actually, I want to give off one small 20 to 30 minutes of 20 minutes of JPA. I've given up little bit information of why do we need JPA instead of Hibernate. It is a portable. Main advantage of JPA is portable. Portable means we can easily convert from one ORM framework to other ORM framework. Okay, all we will use of JPA related annotations. Okay, if you are using of any specific to ORM related features, means then it is depending on that framework only. If you are using of any Hibernate related annotations or methods or classes, then our application is dependent on Hibernate. Okay, correct or not? If you are not using Hibernate related jars, if you are using JPA related one, then easily we can convert from Hibernate to other ORM framework. Hibernate is one ORM framework. In our application, we are using Hibernate. If you want to go for some other ORM framework, Top Link or IBATX, then easily we can modify that from one ORM to another ORM by adding of that jar file in the class path, until if and only if we are using JPA related annotations. Okay, that is main. Yeah, that's it, guys. Actually, I want to tell one more application, but still that is not working as expected. I'll tell you soon that maybe before giving up Spring microservices project, if time is there. Otherwise, I'll start off microservices. Okay, that's all, guys. Maybe we can meet tomorrow. I'll prepare microservices some document for you guys and some examples also. And one more thing I can suggest is like you people can verify in the online, not only my document. If you want, you can go to Google and take some examples. Okay, any example, Spring Boot examples, Spring Boot examples. Then try that. Spring Boot data source configuration, anything. So how they are doing that, just verify it. What they have added, data jpa, okay, maven dependency, properties. See, it is if you want to spring data source, if you want to go for mysql or oracle anything, this is for h2 database, this is for mysql, this is for oracle data source, whichever the database you are using, based on that we can configure those properties. What else extra, this auto configuration we no need to do internally. If you want to add that configuration, we can add it. If you are not doing, hibernate automate, sorry, spring boot itself automatically it will add that. Okay, jnda. What else, this is of customized properties. If you want to load it, if you want you can configure that. This already we know. In case of spring you have seen this. Okay, at the primary, at the primary annotation means, let's say you want to, you if your application want to connect with multiple databases. Okay, if your application want to connect with multiple database, to which database you want to give as a primary first. Okay, this first it will search for this database. If connection is successful for this database, then use that. If that is not that, then go for some other, or first which database you want to load. So that we can define by using of at primary annotation. Okay, at qualifier, at the qualifier annotation will use of if if we have multiple names is there for the same bean, then in that case, to avoid ambiguity between multiple beans, then in that case we can use of the at qualifier annotation. Like this, you need to go to some google and then try for multiple applications, guys, practice it better. Okay guys, fine. Okay, you all got the job, congrats. And please practice by using some google application as well. Okay, for more understanding if you want. Okay, that's all for today's class, guys. We will meet tomorrow. So tomorrow I'll take the class, but I have office bit late tomorrow due to some meetings. So I will take off around 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock until 4 o'clock. I have free, means till 4 o'clock I don't have office. So I will connect anytime till 4 o'clock. Okay. Okay, guys. Yeah. Thank you. We'll meet.